Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years.
Hey everyone, Sue here at 1A Auto, and today we're doing rear brakes on our 07 Mazda 3 with a 2.0 liter in it. So if you need these parts or any other parts for your car, head on over to 1aauto.com. Going to loosen up the lug nuts with the weight of the vehicle and the tire, 21 millimeter. So now you're going to raise the vehicle with a jack and jack stands or a 2-post lift if you have that. I'm going to just remove the lug nuts, set them aside. Break the bleeder screw free, and it's a 10 millimeter wrench or socket. Make sure that it will break free from the caliper. Turn it till I see brake fluid come out. Should be right about now. Perfect. So now we know that works. So when we go to push back our caliper piston, we'll open that up and push the piston back when we get to that. Now I'm going to dismount the caliper from the caliper bracket. And this particular model on this 07 Mazda 3 has caps covering the slider bolts on the caliper. So we're just going to put my fingernail in there, just pry it out. You can use a flathead screwdriver, anything you got. That keeps that head of that, which is an Allen head, keeps it clean from debris, so it's easy to remove it. The head of the slider is a 7 millimeter Allen head. Just gonna put my 3/8 ratchet in there, break them free. It'll come right out of the rubber boot, and you'll be able to see how this works. There we go. That's the slider bolt, sorry. There's one on the top, just like it. We're going to pull that one out. And there's our top one. We'll be cleaning those up later for the restyle. Now with the caliper pins out, I'm going to use a flathead pry bar, and I'm going to wiggle out this. It's a anti-rattle spring clip. Sometimes they do freeze inside there, like that one is frozen. So get the top one out, and it adds pressure to the bracket and pulls the pads down in. It's crucial, you have to have this. It's a necessity. It's not an option. I'm going to spray that. All I did was spray a little rust inhibitor in there, and I'm working it back and forth. Probably get a pair of pliers and really twist that. There we go. I'm going to remove the pads from the caliper bracket, inner and the outer. Now we're going to remove the bracket from the rear control arm. This is a 14 millimeter socket or wrench. Break it free. I like to take the top one out before you take the bottom one out, so that way the bracket doesn't move on you. This is a nice rear brake job on the Mazda because there's no tins or caliper hardware other than the spring. And one big spring on the outside of the caliper. Set that aside and we'll remove the rotor. I'm going to put the caliper in the back here. Now we can take the rotor off. And we can see that the backing plate is extremely rotted. In order to replace that, we would have to dismount the hub from the rear control arm, and that's a lot of work. So we're just going to make sure it stays back from the rotor so it doesn't cause any noise going down the road. Let's clean up the hub and get ready to reassemble. So here we have our new brakes from 1A Auto. And here are the ones that we removed from our 07 Mazda 3. The ones from 1A Auto have a nice cut on the pad. That's to stop the chattering and noise. It stops brake dust from building up in the cooling line. Comes with a anti-rattle clip, and the backing is riveted on. That is like a silencer pad. The rotor itself is nice solid steel, cross-cut, and if it needed to be balanced, it would have a cut on it. Gives you your manufacturer's specs. Solid rotor, not vented. And here's the hardware from 1A Auto also. That's an anti-rattle clip for the caliper and the pads. So if you need these parts or any other parts for your car, click on the link below and head on over to 1aauto.com. Take a nice wire brush, brass brush, and we want to get rid of any rust, chunks, any debris. Clean this. Before we push the piston back, we have to open the bleeder screw, which we have previously broken free, so we know it does move. And it should be hopefully a little bit easier to break it free. It's a 10mm socket or wrench. I'm going to use the bracket to go up against. Make sure you have a catch pan underneath. You don't have to take it off too much, just enough to get it to start dripping. I'm going to use a pair of needle nose pliers. I'm going to put them inside those two spots of the piston. So with the needle nose pliers in the two eye holes there, I'm just going to turn the piston. Brake fluid will come out. And I'm just compressing, pushing, and twisting at the same time. You'll know when the piston is all the way down. There we go. I see no tears on the dust boot for the caliper, and it's not wet anywhere, so that means it's not leaking. So we're ready to tighten up that bleeder screw. So I'm going to put a little high temp never sees on the hub because I don't want the new rotor getting a rust line or forming rust underneath. It just keeps it from freezing up on the hub, which is obviously not what you want. Just has to be a little thin coat. Now we're ready to put the rotor on. So before I mount it, I'm just going to clean it with a little parts or brake clean. You get the packaging film off of it. They put an anti-rust film. I'll just wipe it down. Now I can just line it right up, place it on. Now we're gonna move to our bracket, and we're gonna clean the bracket. So here we have the caliper bracket that the pads sit in and slide. There is no metal tins on this design. It just literally the pads slide in there. So I'm going to take a wire brush. And you can see all the road dirt and corrosion in there. That stops the pads from moving back and forth freely, which will cause uneven wear. So just with a wire brush, just want to clean the surface and where the actual pad rides. I'll take a little brake clean and spray it. Make sure there's no raised chips of rust. It looks pretty good. I'll move on to the other side. I'm going to lift my caliper up out of the way, move it over to the other side. And now I can install the bracket. Just sits right in there, goes right into the housing of the rotor surface. And I can start one bolt. Start the other. This is the 14mm wrench or socket size, 14mm. We're going to bottom these out and we're going to torque them. The torque specs on this is 56 foot-pounds. So I'm going to snug them both down before I torque it to the specs. There you go. Here's the bottom one. Perfect. Now we're ready to put our pads on and then mount our caliper. We're going to have to clean up the slider pins. See all the rough sludge in there? That's heavy duty. That's going to stop that pin from sliding. That pin is supposed to slide with the motion of the brake pedal as you apply the brakes and let your foot off the brakes. So if you have a wire wheel at home, I strongly recommend trying using that. But we're going to try it without the wire wheel. I'm going to spray it with brake clean and use my wire brush. See if I can get that nice and smooth. Came out pretty good. There you go. You want a nice smooth surface. If it hangs up at all, you're going to have major uneven pad wear. And if you're going through the trouble doing it yourself, you want to do it right. That way you can show it off and be proud. Okay, so we're going to do the same to this one. Now that we've cleaned up our caliper slider pins, we're going to put some silicone paste. It's water resistant, high temp silicone paste. You're going to put them right inside these caliper boots. That's where the pin rides, and you want that to stay water resistant, not a grease. A grease will collect dirt and break down with water. The silicone paste that's water resistant will stay nice and lubricated for hopefully the life of the next brake job. Now I'm going to brake it, push it in, and we'll see how smooth that slides. Nice and easy. Just work that back and forth, and then do the top. I'm going to wipe any excess off the threads. Just get it off there. Leave it flush so that when you go to mount it, it won't hit the bracket and not allow you to sit on the caliper bracket. So I'm going to put the outer pad on. Flush that rotor. I'm going to put the inner pad on. That's all they do is just ride in that groove that you cleaned up. See? So you want that always nice and clean. Now I'm going to bring the caliper around. Center my top bolt. That's a 7mm Allen head. gonna get it started. Now I can push down and get that one to start. There's the bottom slider bolt. Now with the caliper slider bolts bottomed out, the torque is 22 foot-pounds. Get the top. Okay. Now we're ready to move on and put on our anti-rattle clamp spring. Okay, there's really no severe easy way to do this, but I can tell you you need to put the pins, the springs in the hole first. So if you can get one started on the top and get the other one started on the bottom. See if I get a pair of pliers. See if I can help manipulate that. This is the one that was rusted in. I'm wondering if we're going to have to make that hole bigger. Yeah, see, so if you run into this at home, it seems like there's some corrosion in there. So I'm going to take like one of my smallest drill bits and just hand clean it out. I'm going to start with the bottom pin. Take a little hammer and hit it in. There we go. Then I'm going to spring the spring down, line up that hole. And we got to bring this piece over the tab there. So to do that, I'm going to tap this in a little bit. It's not going to go all the way in because the spring is hitting the bracket. So now we have to pull the spring down over the bracket. Here we go. Okay. So I basically put the bottom spring in the hole down the bottom first, and the top one. I just held it with pliers, flexed it, and then tapped it with the hammer and went in. And now the caliper has no movement. That's the anti-rattleness for the caliper. Keeps it flush in the front. And last but not least, don't forget to put the boots on the slider pin boots. And that keeps the road dirt and water out. Now you're ready to go down the road. First we're going to pump up our brakes, see how they feel. Now we're going to pump the brakes. And have all those caliper pistons seat themselves and the pads seat themselves. You'll feel it, it gets firm. Once it's definitely there, it's not sinking down anymore, we're clear to open the bleeder screws and gravity bleed it. Now I'm going to check the master cylinder before I open the rear bleeder screws, and I'm just going to take the cover off. And I know it takes .3, but the manufacturer will have it right on the cap of the type of brake fluid to put in the vehicle. I'm going to top it off, bring it right up to the max line. It's right there. It's almost empty. I'm just going to finish it off because I am going to open the bleeder screws. We're going to recheck this again. I replaced the cap so no dirt falls in there. Now with the brake pedal pumped up, master's full, I know I'm safe. I'm in the right rear wheel. That would be the passenger rear. And I'm going to open the bleeder screw. It's a 10mm wrench, and I'm going to let that gravity bleed. I'm going to do this till you don't see any air come out. I want to see a steady stream. stop it. Nice. It already doesn't sink as far down as it did in the beginning. I'm going to repeat this procedure twice because it's always better safe than be sorry. So now that I've pumped it up again, I'm just going to go to the right rear, passenger rear, open the bleeder screw, let some more gravity bleed, then move on to the left rear, and should be all set. .21mm socket, and the wheel torque on this 07 Mazda 3 is 87 foot-pounds. We're going to tighten in a star pattern. One more time. There you go.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at oneauto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.